All right. I have no idea how this is going to go, but I am Michael Matthews, Confessions of an Improv GM, and tonight is brought to you by Red Stag. You'll notice it's empty because I've done some drinking already tonight. Um, However, this seems like a really good time to do some prep for unknown armies. And you're like, that seems like a weird thing to do when you're hammered. Is it? Is it? So on Mondays, I run unknown armies with some people online, and it's been fantastic. It's one of those things where it does work. It's one of those things where the game itself is not only a shit ton of fun and one that I seriously wish I had found long before I did, but it's also one of those. The actual prep is super fun to do, and I'm considering taking some of the stuff that I put together and maybe trying to put it on the Stratosphere, which is on Drive Through RPG, and it's what Atlas Games has put together, so that you're able to actually go buy things from third parties. Because I think that'd be kind of cool. Because I enjoy putting this stuff together and polishing it enough to put it in there seems cool. I don't know if I'll do it or not. But if you are a player of mine on Mondays, I might give a slight spoiler here in a moment for the Children of Sarpedon, which is what we started doing before we lost one of our players. If you want to see that, cool. But then I'm going to go on to what's probably going to happen this coming Monday. And today is the 29th. So Monday is going to be October 2nd. So if this is after the storyline that begins on October 2nd is done, you might want to not see this as of yet. So we started originally with three people because we had a break in our wheeled game, which I would love to get back to at some point, but one of our players got super busy and then moved and may come back to us. But we started Unknown Armies as a campaign, which is something I've always wanted to do because I've run some one shots. And Unknown Armies is kind of like the Invisibles and the Matrix and the X Files all had this glorious child that is just nuts. Some of the coolest magic I've seen. Outside of like a regimented system, like you get like out of Ars Magica. But as far as like modern urban fantasy, it is the coolest setting and information that I have seen. One of a couple games where I'll actually recommend the fiction because normally like the fiction in role playing games is awful. It's bad. But Unknown Armies, I actually read and super look forward to the fictional elements of it. Um, like I just read two books that were literally Unknown Armies books. Uh, the more recent one, which is Godwalker. I'm sorry. Well, Godwalker is not the more recent one, but the other one is called You, which is a weird second person, but it's not about you. It's about a specific individual. And while parts of the writing is a little clunky, the storytelling was so interesting and the world was so cool that the parts that were a little are totally worth going through. So let me open this up just a little bit so that what I'm writing is a little easier to see. Let's go variable. Beautiful. A little bit better. Okay, so originally, this idea, the Children of Sarpedon, that we were doing with this particular game was that there was a carnival that the players had. One of the players in particular had lost a bunch of his family at. You would go and you would see a theater show that was being put on at this carnival. And what happened is, at the end of it, everyone would disappear from reality except for one person who would be left as the witness. So the original story I had for this, and I've done some research and bought some stuff that was cool, was taking from the painting The Wreck of the Medusa, which is based on an actual wreck that happened, that when they created a raft and they had like three boats ahead of them, three of the life rafts or the lifeboats. They were supposed to help carry this raft that got like within a really shockingly short period of time cut away from all the other survivors. So you had, if I'm recalling correctly, like 130 people on this raft, but by the time it was finally like rescued, there was like 13 to 15 people left. They killed a bunch of people. They pushed some people off of it. They had eaten some of the people, from what we found. And there was this kind of amazing story and this idea that essentially they had become trapped because of how popular this painting, The Wreck of the Medusa, which I was first introduced in a book called The History of the World in 10.5 Chapters, which is super good. Um, there is 2 chapters on this painting, one of which is the story about what actually happened, and the other which is like the most fascinating art critique I've ever read. So I had read those. I'm like, cool, we'll make this the thing that's happening. And I'd even dropped some hints so that if my players had Googled it, they might have actually discovered what was going on because I had made hints about the raft and the true, like the piece of the true raft, which probably would have been a piece of the painting because the raft itself I don't think still exists. But it was one of those things where I was totally looking forward to them somehow going after a piece of one of these to do a ritual to kind of put it together. And the members of the raft, because they had left others behind, were essentially taking others who had left people behind out of the world, but taking other people with them. Our person who was most closely tied into that left, so we switched storylines. So I might bring some of that back in, but probably not. So recently, we just had them go into a place where when they showed up at Crossroads, Tennessee, there were a couple flashbacks to realizing they'd been here before because a messenger archetype had shown up and given a message to one of the characters who's an archetype of the star that specifically mentioned them maybe helping out. They found out what had happened before. They were going to solve what had happened years ago. So the players show up and find out they had been in this place 3 years ago, but they were essentially a demon of sickness, a nurse who had been giving cancer to people in that area, like whoa crazy, like whoa damn it, like all over the place. And an adept of anthropomancy who was there ended up trying to play Russian roulette with her little brother to essentially get a major charge and try to reverse everything, but her little brother died. So she kind of lost her mind a little bit when that happened and basically wished it all away, which took this entire area out of existence. It's still literally physically there, but it doesn't show up in any maps. Like Google Maps just shows like an error. Any physical map you find, there's a misprint or a tear or something is wrong in that area. You never can see what's there. And they did some cool stuff. They found the person, and we're kind of hoping they get to the point where they're building it with the star doing a concert, and the Cinemancer was trying to make this big thing happen where eventually, basically, he created a major charge himself by making a musical number at the end of that kind of cliche. It didn't end up working. So they failed to bring this part back into existence. So that's where we left them. So now I'm looking for what's going to happen next. And what our group is doing essentially is going around the country and encountering weird things. As of yet, they haven't really decided on a thing they want to do. When they do, we're going to end up using that as their objective. But right now, they are, for the most part, just really kind of interested in what's weird out there. We had the one thing, and I had a ball with that. So now I want to take something else. And having been reading some of the old second edition books, there's some things that I think are really cool, and I'm reading through stuff with the New Inquisition now, which is different from second edition than it is to third, but it feels like I'll know more once I read the second edition to be able to determine what it should be like in third. So I'm going to go with the one I already read, which is Max Attack. Mac Attacks. Mac Attacks are basically people who give... it's an organization of people who work at McDonald's who are all tied into this organization that what they did was basically put magical charges in random people's food to let magic happen all over the place. And one of the things they did was create a ritual at the year 2000, and they kind of actually overrid other people trying similar stuff, which I love because it's so weird. And it's so out of the blue that other people who are trying these really complex, complicated things got essentially overridden by this really anarchic, not quite tied together group, which I really like. So I'm thinking one of the things I'd like to see happen is them kind of meet Mac Attacks. make sure that's the actually correct way to spell it. Um, So I like the idea of them meeting someone and traveling through, because one thing I want to kind of bring into this is this idea of the underground, which, to be honest, is not something we have dealt with much yet, because I wanted to have a better grasp on what this actual underground was, because it's certainly weird. And Unknown Armies isn't kind of like any other um, thing I've seen. So what I wanted to do is, as I've been kind of reading up on some of the other stuff, um, it gave me some ideas of how to bring this idea that there is a cult underground that is a major part of this world, and that the characters are a part of. Because we have right now, we've got, which is cool. We have an avatar of the star, who is someone who essentially is seeking attention. She's a musician that she travels around, and her thing is she can kind of notice when people notice her, and there's other things that she's growing to be able to do. Um, we have a Cinemancer whose whole thing is he kind of lives on movie cliches, and his magic all involves movie cliches. Like if someone's like there's no way this will work, he can kind of get some magical charge out of that, and then can use that to basically make something happen. Which he basically made a gun not go off in the last game because of that, which is one of the things I love about the magical aspects of um, Unknown Armies in general. Also considering our star at one point, as they had this cult, like an actual real world cult, which I pulled from, searching them down because they had been seen not too far from a place where some stuff had happened. She literally got up and started a concert at 2:30 in the morning in the parking lot of like a Hotel 8 that they were at, and all the other people came out and were like looking at her. Because she's a star, she's able to pull all that in, which meant the people couldn't do much to her. And I like the fact that this is a game that makes violence kind of like the last thing you do. And the other person in there is a food critic who basically is like obsessed with old diners and goes all around the country with a blog about food critic, and actually managed to like, oh, here's a diner, we're going to make this kind of important. So as they're going around, they're visiting diners, they're going to small places, they're doing concerts in dive bars, that stuff is being filmed, and it really kind of creates this amazing group of stories that I super like. So as they're traveling through, um, I think actually, let me do this real quick. I've used Google Maps sometimes to find some stuff, and then occasionally take pictures and put them up. Um, I'm going to Google and see if there's a place you can get, just a random place in the USA, random US city picker, because I want a small one. And everything I'm seeing here are like the big, like the ones you've heard of, which is not what I want. What I want is a very small place. Um, Random geographic coordinates. I don't know if I can get this to actually choose something um, in America. I might just pull up Google Maps, Google Earth rather, and then narrow my way down to a place, which I think I'm going to do. So the idea of going from small town to small town is a little bit of supernatural in here, which oops, not what I wanted, which I think is kind of cool because like, let's go different places, meet people, have these kind of cool, intense experiences, and then find out what's weird and then move on. Because for me, one of the things that's important is actually having enough of a NPCs. Because like a type of game where there's really no NPCs doesn't do a lot for me. So what I am looking for is something where I can have a mix of both NPCs and of um, plot stuff that's happening. So I'm gonna try this real quick. Let's see how this goes. So, so I'm going to change right now my thing to Google Earth Pro. Oh, there we go. Oh, shoot. How should I be able to do this? Okay, so I got Google Earth. that big. Make this a little bit smaller. And let's also bring my Word file, or Open Office file rather, because that's what I'm using. Let's bring this here, smaller. But at least what you're able to see is we're looking at Google Earth and what are the kind of cool, weird stuff we can find there. A bit smaller. Okay, so if I go up here, closer, not quite what I wanted, but that'll work. Okay, so what I want to do here is first I'm going to rename this. Sorry, y'all. Confessions with Google Earth. And move that up there. Okay. So I'm going to just try to pick a place randomly. Last time they were in Tennessee. So we're in Tennessee. Let's take someplace a little more sort of, what's here? So I'm going to just kind of zoom in and, oh, what's this? Okay, Wood River. Wood River is a place I've never heard of. It looks pretty small. Wood River, Nebraska. Okay, and there's a little church there in the picture, which is perfect. So we're going to go to Wood River, Nebraska. I'm going to look that up in a minute. That's where, is NB for Nebraska? That's, I think, where the next thing is going to take place. Oh, it's NE. I think it's Nebraska. So we'll have this interesting stuff taking place in this very small town we have never heard of. So Wood River, Nebraska has 1,325 people. That's small. I went to a relatively small high school after being an Air Force brat, and that is like a quarter of the size. I think that was about 5,000 people. I think in the town I went to high school in, that was pretty sheltered. This is like a quarter the size of that, so it's small. So it's pretty tiny. Oh, cool. Kind of has a large. Hispanic or Latino is about 17.7% of the population. So there's actually a pretty good sized Latino population. So I think what we can do is make a good portion of the cool characters Latino. Simply because we see white people all the time, and it is good to see those who are not in stereotypical roles of other ethnicities. So I'll just make a note: 17.7% Latino. Cool. So in this place, I want them to sort of run. They'll know somebody. Whoops, I hit the wrong thing. So bring that back up again. There we go. So in this small place, they're going to know somebody who is from this area. There is going to be, let's see if there's a Burger King there, because specifically, one of the things that happened after the 333 incident, which is where essentially the invisible clergy who's sort of in charge of the world in many respects, the archetypes who are people who ascended, they have become, they got full. 333 people were there on 333, on March 3rd, 2003. And some major shit went down, and the world sort of restarted. And I like the fact that you don't really notice it restarts in this area, because, or in this game, because it's actually kind of more hopeful, is what it seems to be like so far. So, but when that happened, over the next couple of years, much stuff happened with Mac attacks, and they went from being essentially purists of working at McDonald's to Some of the people worked other places simply because they had certainly had um, some of their people invaded, sort of not invaded. Some people killed. There had been some attacks. People started taking them a little seriously. So it looks like okay. Grand Island is a place not far from there. There's a Burger King, and one of the people who used to be in charge of Mac attacks is now working for Burger King. Um, so Grand Island is the nearby bigger city, which, to be honest, is probably where this a lot of this adventure is going to happen. Because the small town, I like. So far, what I've kind of liked is the weird stuff happens in the really small towns, but there's going to be somewhere nearby a bigger town where they're staying, where she's performing, and it so far has not been particularly large. Um, these towns that they have been in. So this one, oh, I'm still doing maps. Let's do this. So Grand Island is going to be what looks like a bigger place. Oh, 48,520 people. Okay, so that sounds like a place that could support one of Roxy's concerts. So this is the place that they're going, which is cool. And I can kind of look up some stuff there. But I think in that smaller island, we're going to have something going on. Though Mac Attacks will, I think, give a couple of their weirdness, their weird stuff out there. I like the idea of not knowing what's going to happen yet, simply because there's like a random table of weird shit that can end up happening. And I like that because it means I get to be surprised, and it also means I'm not like, well, this specific thing is going to happen. So I think something else has occurred because the Mac attack is close by, but they're going to encounter Mac attack doing some weirdness once they arrive because I think one of the characters will know someone who's there. So, like, for example, just so you have an idea of what this might be, like a percentage, I just rolled a 78. If I were to roll a 78 with my players, what we'd have for Mac attacks would then be a next time there's somebody walks out of a bathroom, the door opens into his childhood home. That's kind of neat. That would be super weird and kind of cool. But that didn't happen. But they'll kind of meet someone that that something weird happens to. So I made a note of the pages those particular things are on because I'm going to just roll randomly and see some of the weird stuff. Like for the next 24 hours, understand the subtext of every spoken sentence, not just the words, what the speaker thinks and feels about those words, or a vivid dream instructs the recipient in a minor ritual of some sort. The first time he tries that ritual, if ever, it works automatically. Or develop aura sight at 50% for the next week. So that's weird. So weirdness is going to happen, which means is we need something happening in Wood River that is going to affect. That's going to be something the players have to deal with. So what I'm going to do is take a quick look around. Let's see what's around Wood River. What kind of weird things do we have here? Okay, little tiny buildings. As I'm sort of looking through, this looks like one of those places that essentially is mostly like a single level. You got you got a whole bunch of houses. When you look at the little bits that are businesses, and again, I can't be entirely sure, so let's go ahead and take the other view. I'm going to take a look. Take a quick look at Wood River. It looks like we just go through this road. And again, I kind of like the idea of this being... Okay, so we have what looks like one of the little tiny towns. We have some in this area, like Tolono, Illinois, for example. This part looks like it could almost be taken straight from. So we have one of those like, tiny, small towns. I can't click over there. I can click over this way, though. Where you don't have necessarily a whole lot, which is cool. So I like the idea that there has been something brewing in this area for a while, and because it's small town, it's one of those things that has kind of gone unnoticed because it has its own quirks that other like this bridge is kind of cool because I don't know what the hell this bridge goes to, and I'm curious. Oh, what the fuck? Okay, I'm gonna double check, make sure you can see this. Okay, so this bridge just literally just stops. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so the bridge literally just sort of stops, which is super weird and super cool and something I am sure as hell going to use because now I'm curious what is actually happening on this bridge. It needs to be something kind of important happening here because um, zoom out. Okay, there we go. So we've got this bridge which is tied into what is a bridge or what this is really tied into. Um, it's tied into whatever this is, and for our purposes, um, we're going to make that kind of whatever the hell we want. Um, I'm just going to look up Wood River Bridge on the Nebraska on the off chance there's some information I can get. But I fucking love the idea of this bridge just going out into nothing. Um, because with unknown armies, there's something on the other side of that bridge. There's a reason that bridge exists and just stops over the highway. Um, okay, so I'm sort of looking here, not necessarily seeing something from it, which I was kind of hoping. Can I find on this? Not crossing the river. I don't care about the river. I care about the one across the highway. According to Irish legend, the site was haunted after a buffalo hunter was struck by lightning and then buried nearby. That's a different bridge, the Patty Francis Bridge, which I'm going to look up. So the Patty Francis Bridge, I'm finding a person. He would be very weird if Wood River, Nebraska. He would find it weird if I got a hold of him. Let's go ahead and take a look at those images. Oh, wow. Okay, so I found this kind of a cool image of a bridge going over a river, which I don't know if it's exactly for this area. It looks like it's a little bigger than what this town is. The Eagle Tribune, this is Haverhill. Haverhill. I only have 4 pages left. I'm looking for something that says where this might be. Like Massachusetts, it looks like. Yeah, this is not where I want to be looking. Nebraska. Patty Bridge. Let's see what this brings up. Okay, that looks probably closer to it. Small little bridge that's just hanging out over a river. Nothing too huge. Nope, that's in Pennsylvania. Damn it. Let's take a look here again. So looking at this really tiny small town, and we have this really interesting bridge that just sort of stops across the way. And I don't know what the Patty Francis Bridge is, but it seems like maybe it's something else. Yeah. What's here? Tau. Wood River Post Office. Didn't help too much. So once again, I'm going to throw it here. So I'm going to take a quick look. Yeah, so again, this doesn't even seem to go into a building. Maybe it used to. It looks like it's been destroyed at one point. I don't think I can actually get on the other side of that to see, but let's kind of look over here. Down this little strip road. So that strip mall right there. We have the bridge that I'm seriously fascinated by right now. They're just kind of there. Okay, so I think for our purposes, I might try to find out the name of the bridge. But that bridge, something comes across it uh, every once in a while. There's not. I don't like to think it's like a full moon. I don't want it to be like something like clockwork where you can be like, oh, at this point, this thing happens. I want it to be something a little harder to figure out where it's going to be. So I'm going to just roll a random thing between 70, 77. The 70s are popular today. I'm going to take a look at page 77 in book 3 to see if there's something that looks interesting. Because book 3 is essentially book 3 of Unknown Armies is essentially a thing for the weird. So, red sauce. Make a meal with red sauce or bolognese. Is especially good at hiding the taste. You put some blood in it. While they eat, talking and chatting as it normally does. If you ask your guest a yes or no question, he answers yes. He simply blurts out no matter what you tend to say. He might not mean yes, but may try to backpedal. Okay. Interesting. Men who try this ritual find that women tell them no. Okay. So that's not going to work, I think. Two things here that are interesting. Reptilian Hunting Society. According to some real kooks, there's a race of shape-changing lizard people that are secretly running things like a reptilian Illuminati. Because they can shape change, look like humans. They've infiltrated the top levels of government to accomplish their evils and human goals, which are, quote, ... Well, the conspiracy usually falls apart at this point. That's not important. They're in the White House. So yeah, David Icke is likely the most famous believer, but Wendy Chipakali and her husband Dinesh are the most dangerous. They're both adepts who seriously believe in this stuff. How seriously? They use magic and mundane methods to identify and assassinate suspected reptilians. The key word is suspected. Okay, so possibly this could be a thing with these reptile hunting society that they go into, that maybe the reptiles that take over stuff come from this area. Kind of liking that idea quite a bit. Let's see what else we have on this page. Revengeful. When a person dies normally, or at least without unfinished business, the soul moves on somewhere else. When death is caused by magic, well, not much happens differently. The soul moves out and the body's still muck. But when the person is killed by magic, and he knows it, he's royally pissed off, he might become a revengeful. The ghost thing, I want to do stuff with that later, but I just kind of did something with it. So, okay, I'm loving this idea of the Reptilian Hunting Society. Okay, so make a note, book 3, page 79. So let's say that there is essentially a portal where reptilian entities emerge from time to time from this place. So essentially you have this sort of portal where occasionally just things show up. And I love that idea because it means what we're looking at is something super weird. And I've got a couple cool things to use here. So they emerge from time to time from this place. And when the players get there, they might know Chipakali and Dinesh. The most dangerous, they use magic and mundane methods to identify and assassinate suspected reptilians. So if they're assassinating people, keyword suspected, because they look perfectly human, even down to DNA, because of crossbreeding. There's not dumb enough to target big-name politicians yet. She keeps the society focused on low-level officials. Killing reptilians who can use magic is even better than getting rid of the reptilian school board president. While society is well-funded or widespread, it's kind of full of the other kind of energy and dedication that only truly man can possess. So she has a society. I think it's probably a bunch of other, a bunch of places. I like the meeting the two people in charge of it because it's still super small. Oh my God! So my question here becomes, are they correct in that they have ulterior motives? So they've come here, they've heard about things coming out of the bridge. So my question is, do I want the things coming out of the bridge to actually be these reptilian things, or do I want it to be something else? And do I want them to have like evil ulterior motives? So we just had someone who was trying to fix the sickness and illness. Things went wrong. So we just had essentially the good intentions gone bad. So I think I kind of want to make it so that this is actually happening here. I like the idea that like school board president and stuff like that. Um, I would love to see them get involved like in some small town politics. So when they show up, they know Wendy and Dinesh, and they also know. We'll say one of the things Dinesh does, because they're both avatars. I think it says. Or adepts rather. And what adepts do is adepts essentially have, yeah, they're both adepts. They essentially have this thing they're obsessed by, but in the wrong way, which actually creates magic. Like our Cinemancer, who's huge on movies, creates cliches and gets power from cliches. I don't. The name isn't quite Photomancer. I'll look it up. I think one of them wants to be a photo. I want him to be a Photomancer. The other, and there's a list in one of these based essentially of all of the different adepts, and I've got some of the old books, which is useful, but they haven't necessarily brought all of them over. Then one of them actually has like a pages, little table of contents that has got all of them listed. So I do kind of want to look and see. Maybe I'll figure out what it is, because I don't want like one of the super weird ones. Like in there's one that's like essentially deals with agriculture and pull stuff up really slowly. I kind of want something that's going to be quicker and super weird. Oh man, no, book 2, 3, which will maybe talk about what's in the other books. Just a list of different types of adepts. So I think we make one of them Photomancer, because I kind of like their abilities and the idea that they're taking these pictures and trying to use them to figure out what's going on. And what's Personomancy? Ritual use of masks is okay. That sounds awesome. Okay, Personomancy, which I think was probably something in probably in Unknown Armies 2. The idea of using masks is it ties into this whole idea of having the reptilian people there in charge. I like that idea. So cool. So we're using this idea. There's a Photomancer and a Personomancer who are married and who are trying to find the people in this area. And then cool. One of my favorite things to use, I have got like random name generators and some that will just give me like modern humans, or I can go maybe modern families. What do modern families give me? Oh, okay. So with modern families, I'm going to pull a couple things here. So we have Eric Wood and Holly Hall, upper middle class, unmarried, 3 children, or three girls, 2 boys. So they got like 5 kids, but unmarried. Cool. So the way I can get there are a couple different name generators I like to use, because some of the stuff that I like to get will be various like people from various cultures. So we have a large Hispanic population there. So Dante Matez, who's male, Anselmo Vaquero, and Marcelia Farfan, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong, Costanza Puerta. So I don't want to make any of these uh, the lizard people. I want these to be people who are maybe suspected, because I also kind of like the idea that there's a little bit of racism, even with Wendy and Dinesh Chipikali. Still a little racism towards maybe the Mexicans, Latino, Puerto Ricans, etc. in that area. Because I like that idea because it used the idea of sort of like aliens, like illegal aliens. Though none of these four are going to be, but it takes that idea and puts them in a position where it almost sort of makes sense because they're not from this area. But I think the other reptilians are essentially able to take over someone as opposed to creating a new life. So like maybe Wendy and Nash are a little bit wrong. So I've also got Henry, Luther, and Shannon Field, um, who are rich, um, are going to be some people that they deal with as well. And let's go, just three sort of families: Addison and Phoebe Getty. So yeah, if we they were so we'll say three girls, three boys. So I think they're trying to have lots of children so they can essentially start to breed and take over. Um, and I'll say Henry and Shannon only have got one so far. Maybe twins are. I don't know what it is. How about twins are super common with the reptile people who've been coming through. So a lot of kids, which if you are especially a Catholic Latino, is probably going to be a little more likely. Not necessarily, but if you're Catholic, there tends to be bigger families. Um, these three, like super white, I think like the last one, like white, pretty well off. They've taken over some of these families and started to breed, and they've been here for quite some time. Occasionally, like the ones that come through are taking over. There's a few others. Um, so a few other reptilian people hiding in the area, but without um, identities yet. So we'll go with this idea that they essentially take over identities um, and become those people for all intents and purposes, and they are onto the hunters. Uh, they've tried to set them on to these families. We'll say some rituals that they've used that have made them sort of come out uh, in the pictures and such she's taking, um, come out strange. And they've been doing like a lot to kind of try to avoid these groups in general. So I think they're school board president. So what? Let's make. I'm gonna roll a die. Let's go ahead and make Constanza Puerta. Let's make her school board president, and she's the kind who's involved in everything. There's a decent chance she'll end up in politics. I like the idea that she's about 30 at this point, hugely civic minded, and maybe a little ambitious for down the road. Kind of building up her stuff now, getting more comfortable in those positions, getting her contacts, and building herself up. Like Dante, let's go ahead and make him a bartender at one of the local bars. I'll probably try to look up and see if there's a real one nearby, because I like to use those on kind of this. Knows a lot of people. Rumors spread about him just from some sort of local racists have said some things, and that's one of the things that got into the ear of that got into the ear of Wendy and Dinesh. So that, some of that stuff went around. And Selmo, why don't we make him a Heva owns basically a teacher store, um, and plus other sort of supply store in the area that he has set up. I think we'll say wife is sort of a little teacher, the one that helps, and she's been able to sort of help kind of get things going, which kind of puts him in a little bit with the school board and their president, and Marcelia. Um, I think that she's an IT professional. Um, she's working in Grand Island, so not too far away, um, for a company there. These are the ones that they're going to find out that Wendy and Ash have their sights on. I also like the idea that one of the reasons they've come to him is all four of these people are single, because what they think they're looking for are single people who are um, trying to get their inroads. We got like the teacher supply store kind of works in with the school board president. Maricel, IT professional that let's say she contracts out to the schools. And let's say Dante's got a daughter in the high school, and he's decently active with the school at times. That's why, so they all kind of know each other. The four of them have sort of come together and become friends. So it's one of those things that Wendy and Nash looked and saw. Here are the problems. These seem to be them, and they're getting weird things because these six people who are the actual reptilians are sending them on their way. So they have either Shannon Lillyfield. Rich will say own chains of superstores, which I kind of like the idea of. And Phoebe Getty with 3 girls and 3 boys. Let's say they are. What should they be? Let's go. Eric Wood and Holly Hall. Upper middle class, unmarried. We'll say vice president an advertising firm, and stay-at-home husband. And Jonathan Addison and Phoebe Getty. 3 girls, 3 boys. Let's say one manager of a wood shop and employee of a photography studio. Maybe when they may have met. The cameramancer kind of realized some of the stuff that was going on because they have some abilities as well. So we have our weirdness going on, which I am 100% for. So we got the weird reptilians, which will be cool. I'll kind of decide at some point in the next couple of days what they can actually do, what their sort of powers or abilities are. But the cool thing is I now have essentially the Unknown Armies game, the most part, prepped. At this point, I can improvise the rest of it while these 6 are trying to essentially set the sights of these 2 on anybody that they can. They found their people. They have kind of whispered in their ears the things that they think will send them against them, and these 2 are going to be looking for the help of our players. So they will have this opportunity to find out, are they assassins, which I'll guarantee you they're not. But what are the things that they're going to want to figure? Oh, no. One of them is a food critic, one of our players. I should make one of them not a manager of a wood shop. Let's go manager of a diner. So I think Jonathan Addison is someone our person is going to be able to meet. So cool. As far as the prep that I need for right now, and I will actually kind of come up against the rest of the stuff, I'll call this Reptile Days. Those are the kind of things that I can do later. Let it kind of like percolate in my head a little bit. Right now, I kind of want to see how well this works on Twitch in general, and I've also got a local file, so we can put it up on YouTube. But this is kind of the way that I prep. So I'm Michael Matthews, I'm the Improv GM, and you have yourself a great rest of your day. Oops, I hit the wrong thing. I also initiated local streaming, which I was doing already. Let me shut that off. Stop.